So this video is called Psychedelic Talks, psychedelic advice, psychedelic questions. I'm going to try and cover bad trips as well, um, and just better help people understand psychedelics, hopefully through this video. But the underlying principle in the reality that we know and establish a comfort with is the fact that we've been given three eyes, two to look and one to see. And the one eye that we are seeing everything with is the mind. And you may have heard the term, the mind is everything, which we don't realize how evident the literacy of this is, the mind being everything. We don't realize the literacy of this until we experience the psychedelic, because what the psychedelic does is it dissolves what you call the mind. And you have to think of it from this point of view. Reality as you know it is all a noun, meaning a person, a place, or a thing. And this is how we come to know reality. This is how we see the world. This is how we see inside and outside. This is how we see places. This is how we see people. This is how we see things and objects that we experience. And the reason we see them is, again, the mind. You think you're seeing the world, you're only seeing your own mind. You think you're seeing an object because you have called it a name, you are not. You have only seen the mind. And that's what the ego does, is it exists through a comfort. It exists through a comfort. I see someone commenting about a bad trip. So I'm going to get to that question or that comment in just 1 second. But the mind is everything, from person to place to thing. All objects, all places, all people, from their birth name to their title, whether it be their boss, the manager, the supervisor, the associate, the worker, whoever, the CEO, it does not matter. These are all titles. They don't exist, nor does the person as the birth name. So you can call me Tyler, you can call me Rumi, you can call me John, you can call me Frank, you can call me any name you'd like. The name exists solely in your mind. You're not seeing me as I am or as I am presenting myself. You're seeing the reflection of your own mind. When you look at me, when you listen to me, you are only listening to the depths of your own mind, of your own self. And that's where the term mirror verse comes in. But again, in this reality, we have nothing to make this apparent to us. I mean, we have quotes like the mirror verse and people teaching you that the universe is a mirror. But again, you will not understand the literacy that everything you are experiencing is directly your own mind. And the hardest one to fathom is that the world is an illusion. And the reason that's so hard to fathom is simply for the fact that we share the same space. We share the same space, which means I could be standing right next to you. I could be standing on the shoreline at a beach next to 100 people. And the irony is all 100 of us, we can comfortably call this picture in front of our eyes the world, and we can call it the earth. But where things start getting dicey is when we start talking about the description, when we start talking about the definition, when we start talking about its make and its shape. Now you have a lot of separation amongst these 100 people, because although all 100 just called this picture the earth or the world, they're all speaking of a different description, a different place. No one is seeing the same reflection because, again, you're only looking into the depths of your own mind. And this is what troubles scientists so deeply. Science and scientific communities want to discover and establish the secret to reality, but they don't realize that this secret is subjective. It is you. You are the great secret. You have searched for yourself in many forms and many places. And the hardest part, the hardest pill to accept from the science community is that there is nothing out there. And this is why spiritualists and spirituality people, they create demons, they create entities, they need the entities because it's the ego. The ego can't admit to itself that it is you the whole time. So this is where you have Arcturians, Pleiadians, demons, and all these players in this game when it's only been you the whole time. And that's what keeps us from our truest power. Your truest power is you've had the power all along, but you hide from yourself behind entities and other various powers and forms. A government is just one of those systems. When you awaken, you realize that a government or a system will always be in place. It doesn't matter what name it's given, and it's the same with God. There will always be a God or a supreme being or word to represent what is, the totality of all that is. But beyond these words, there is no singular word to represent what actually is. And it's the same with government. Government cannot govern the mind. Therefore, there is no revolution that can take place in your city streets. And I've been saying this since 2020. When COVID started breaking out, when people's freedom started being challenged, and everything started changing for people as they knew it. This was making room for us to remove our comfort, to allow us to see into what is actually going on, and the fact that no one has any control here. Even the governments, let's just say they released a virus today into the public on purpose, for the sole desire of population control. Well, even that, the average person who exists and pay bills would say that's control. They're controlling reality because they're releasing something into the public air to cause genocide, for population control. But when you get to the underlying principle, it's fair because there is no discriminating. It's equal, rich and poor alike. It does not discriminate. The virus can get rich, can get poor. It does not matter. It can get anyone. It's random. It's a random selection. And I'm not saying that that makes it better, but there is no form of control here. Even if you chose to do something such as this, there is no form of control because you yourself are now subjecting your own self to the virus, to disease. You're risking the fact that even you catch it. So when you review control from governments to systems to armies to all these things, you realize these are not forms of control. They have no control, and that's the comfort in this control, is we feel if this experience or God or whatever you want to call, the universe is not going in your favor, we feel that we can dominantly grab this screen that we call the world, or we can grab people on this screen we call the world, and we can physically make it submit to our will. And that's our form of control, but that's why we're such emotional beings. And that's why we're driven by such emotion, especially when that sense of control is lost within ourselves. Because half of our identity exists in that sense of control. And when you realize you have no sense of control, or that it's never existed, then you start slowly realizing who you think you are existent in this control does not exist and never has either. Which means control would be never yours. In this sense. But the opposite of fighting for control is not fighting for control, surrendering. And that's something that very few are willing to do because they're terrified. If I surrender myself to this government, because again, everyone thinks they're surrendering to a government. They're not. You're only surrendering to yourself. What you think to be the government holds your truest power. But until you submit to them, you will not hold your power. They hold it for you because you believe in them. You believe in they. When things go corrupt, when things go wrong, they are doing this. They are enslaving us. They are doing this. It's always the finger pointing of they. But all they are mirroring to you is your own self. You're only seeing the depths of your own mind when you look into government and worldly affairs, because there is no world as what you believe in. So, someone said, I had my first bad trip and it taught me more about what is holding me back from the true self more than any enlightening trips I've ever had. That's beautiful. And that's exactly what I was going to get into with bad trips. Bad trips are actually very divine, because if, like you, if you can highlight, and this is what I always tell people, if you can highlight what made the trip a bad trip, because only you can define it as good or bad, but what made it bad, and you have to get as raw and as real and as descriptive with yourself as you can. So some people may say, you know, I had thoughts of killing myself on the trip, or I had thoughts of doing something to end the trip. So if you can highlight at what point did you want to end the trip? What was happening in the trip that made you want to end it? Because if you can highlight where in that trip, you know, you're running from yourself, because that's all it is. When we talk about killing ourselves in a bad trip, you're running from yourself and you're proposing the idea that you can actually escape your truest nature, which you cannot, which is why we talk about exiting the bad trip. When you're having that bad trip, it's because you're being shown pretty much exactly what needs to be shown to you. And we can tend to run from ourselves, especially when the trip can get repetitive, when it repeats, when it repeats, when it repeats. However, what it's trying to show you is that although things are moving, nothing is changing. This is what it's trying to show you. It's trying to show you to yourself. In your reality, in your day-to-day life, you go from work to the store to home to all these places. And it's just like the bad trip that you're having in this trip. They're very one and the same. They're very connected, but many people don't see that. But the same way you run from yourself throughout your day. I'm having a bad day at work. I'm going to go home and have a better day now. I'm going to improve my state. The same way you run from yourself in your day-to-day life is the same way you will run from yourself in a bad trip. Because what it's showing you is, again, you went from work to home to the store and all these places, but the depression, the anger, whatever you felt did not change, did not leave you. And so it's just like the bad trip. Although all these things are changing, nothing is moving. Although you've changed your place, because remember, the mind is all places. Although you've changed your place, I went from this position in space to this position in space, and then this position in space, and then this position in space. And you think there should be different positions in space because you have called them different places. But when you look at the underlying principle that's being shown to you in psychedelics, all these places were made up by your presence, which means you witnessing these places must have been there. You must be present for these places to be evoked out of nothingness. Which means what you're trying to escape is the ego, the person that's trying to do something, trying to become something. You have this idea of yourself as being an ego, as being the name, and so we're trying to capture infinity from the microscopic standpoint, and it cannot be done. You must reach that point of no return where you eliminate the microscopic viewpoint that you are trying to fathom yourself from through this entirety. It cannot be done. What you are, or what you think yourself to be, must be surrendered, must be lost, must be shed, which means you must let go of yourself to truly discover what is awaiting you on the other side. Buddha called it the great beyond. And the great beyond is where we're all connected, is where we all meet as one, where we are all literally the one being, the one presence. Many call it a supreme being, many call it God. But beyond the names and all the changes, We are what cannot be changed, and we are what has not changed. So when you look at psychedelics, always look for what is not changing, what is not leaving you, because that is the trick with Alice in Wonderland. She traveled through all these places, and so many things left her, and yet one thing remained the same. You're in What's highlighted through Alice in Wonderland is you're chasing something that is not there. You're chasing to capture God when it's not there. And the reason it's not there is because you are here. You are here. And the greatest conspiracy between you and yourself is you and God. And as long as you keep these two characters separate and convince they're separate, and you convince yourself that you are just this little ant in space, then this conspiracy will continue to grow greater and greater, which means your two characters that you are playing out subconsciously will only part ways further and further. But when you start reviewing, leave behind the government conspiracies and the worldly conspiracies. These are just surface level. These are for people who want to remain on the surface, and that's perfectly fine. But this is for people who still want to blame, because that's what religions are for. Religions want to blame other people, blame demons, blame entities for their problems. So spirituality evolves from that, because we know we are God. We know we are the devil. So there is no devil or angel or God to point the finger at through spirituality. But even spirituality has come to create an entity to point the finger at. So even though spirituality has liberated itself from the angels and demons it blames, or religions blame, it's created a new one, which makes spirituality a whole new religion birthing out, which is why I tell people to be careful. But instead of it being called a demon or the devil that you point the finger at, you as a spiritual person now focus solely on the government. The government is stopping my alignment. The government is stopping my enlightenment. They're trying to enslave my mind. They're trying to prevent me from ever finding out who I am. And the greatest part is every time you say they're stopping me. This is the very same conspiracy I talk about between man and God. The conspiracy is also between you and the government, because again, the government and God represent your highest power, and you're projecting that power into an entity. It doesn't matter the name. It can be called God, it can be called government. You're projecting this power into this system to inevitably realize that it was you the whole time. And it may take you longer than others, it may take you shorter than others, but inevitably we will all be led to the same conclusion, the same realization. There is no governing force that rotates the stars and phases the moon. We can establish a government for worldly affairs, for agreements, disagreements, things like this, but this is not a form of control. You will never be able to touch the stars, touch the moon, or touch the sun, because they're not physical, and that's what NASA hides from the people, is the inner eye is the outer eye. There is no land beyond the eye. There is no land that your eye has not seen, because the eye is everything. That's why you see these pictures posted where there's a bunch of singular eyes everywhere. That's what it's representing. There is no inside or outside eye. There is one singular eye that creates the inside and outside. And there is no and between inside outside. There is only inside outside because they're connected as one already. If you say the word and between them, they are separated. And then you fall for the illusion of I must study the inside and the outside, instead of I must realize what the inside outside is about. Because there's only one perceiver, there's only one witness to the inside and outside. And it's you, because you've created both. You are the focal point in between inside and outside. You are the dual wielder of duality. You are what's created all of duality. But again, this great conspiracy is with you and yourself, you and the outside world. And this is why we remain in comfort. This is why spirituality is becoming, spiritual music and crystals and chakra work and things like that. If you're looking for an ego death, then chakra work, crystals, all these things do you no good. They serve no purpose. But if you want to flirt with the idea that you're awakening to who your truest self is, then these crystals and these things and these chakras and these processes will serve you purpose. But all this does is delay, is prolong the elixir that you chase. So many people want the real thing, but so few are willing to do the real thing to get those real results. So many are stuck on fooling social media and charging the crystals and doing all these works to seem more enlightened than they are for other people. But all this does is stunt your own growth. And I see it so often in the spiritual community. And I'm not trying to point any fingers or blame anybody here. But be aware. Make sure that you don't cheat yourself. You get real results. Don't fool the world, because again, you will only fool yourself. You will only cheat yourself. You want the real results, but you cannot fake it for social media. You can't fake it online. You must lose these crowds to find yourself. There is no process to enlightenment, and there is no practice to enlightenment, which is why people hear my videos and turn them off. But for the people in spiritual communities offering you a practice, I can give you something where you can practice and see results. These results are superficial. They will not change you to your core. They will change you for the weekend, just like church does. It doesn't change you to your core. They'll change you for the weekend and send you on your way, and you will return. You will return to give me my money, and I will do the same thing on repeat. You can come back when the week depletes you. I will fill you with the energy you already have, and I will send you on your way. But a guru is to remind this being coming to them. I am you, and you have projected this power into me. So the purpose of this guru interaction is to reveal you to your true self. And when you are ready, I will leave you. And it's not a physical leaving. The guru doesn't physically leave you. He can be standing right next to you. But when you awaken to your truest nature, the guru parts ways with you. Why? Because it was your own mind it's the whole time. You've projected that role, guru, into this person. And so what the guru does is he strips you of all your identifications, which makes you separate from what you've called guru. Because all that word represented was your truest power. But you didn't believe in yourself. You believed in yourself as the ego, as the birth name, as all the classifications you've comfortably existed through. So until you remove your comfort, you will not make it to the elixir you are chasing, the white rabbit at the end of the tunnel. It's you the whole time, but we must give up this game with ourselves that we're playing. This is why we watch the news and keep up on all these worldly things. We want to be in the loop. But little do we know, this is all surface level games. All these algorithms of news stories and conspiracies will always repeat, will always exist from now until forever. They don't go away. They'll always be around. There'll always be another conspiracy. There'll always be a corrupt government. There'll always be a system. But when you know yourself to your core, you know you are the only one here. Your presence is directly the only one here. There is no world outside of your presence. There is no land behind your presence. And when you truly awaken, there is no more questions of who I am when I die. Where will I go when I die? What will I be? The answer is here, and the answer is now, and it's always been now. But again, the scientific community avoids now. They can't handle now. Why? Because it's confronting. It's confronting to you and all your illusions. You want to keep all your illusions alive, and what I mean by that is we want to hold to that there really is an alien in space, and it's green, and it looks something opposite to us. It's not. It's you the whole time. But the ego needs to create entities. It needs to create something other than itself, because the hardest pill to swallow at the end of that tunnel is it's been you the whole time. It's you the whole time. There was no alien waiting for you at the end of that tunnel. That was your comforting expectation. And this is why I tell people death comes at a price. And that price is within yourself. And that price is your expectation. If you want to truly die, your expectations must go with you. You must part ways with them, all of them. Otherwise, when you truly die, you will be disappointed. You will be met with disappointment at the end, because you have this grand expectation of what God, the Supreme Being, is, when it's been you the whole time. It's been with you the whole time. It's your presence. Your presence is here and now, and it's not hindered by anything but your own beliefs, but your own thoughts. Right here and now, God is present, and God is speaking through the moment, through the silence. But we don't hear. We don't hear because we're constantly listening to the words. We exist in the words, not the silence. Silence is our truest makeup, is our truest nature, because it is our presence. Presence is the only thing there is, which is the moment. Time is the illusion because it exists in pieces. There is no pieces. There is just one piece, which is the whole itself, the universe, the presence. When you start existing in pieces, now you have people. Now you have a whole race of different people, different beings. But the greatest trick, the greatest conspiracy between all these people is there's only been one hand that's written every single book that's ever been made. And it doesn't matter if it was a female or a male that wrote it. It was your hand that wrote the book. One hand. One hand has written every book in history. And it was yours. And this is how you begin to better understand history and understand time. Is time doesn't exist, it's always been you. You haven't died and gone somewhere else, you are here. Just as you were here 100 years ago, or so you think. When you have died and moved on, you didn't move on and you didn't go anywhere. You are here and you still have been here. When you part ways with this vessel, you will still be here. There is nowhere to go beyond the eye. That's why I say the universe is not physical. There is nothing out there in space. Scientists and NASA have already hit that wall in space. Look at your TV. It's a black screen. So imagine back then, you looking up at the sky and all you see is a black screen. So we start shooting rockets up into the skies to figure out what's inside of this black screen, or are we inside of a black screen? And what happened time and time again was NASA and scientists could not get past the wall in space. They endlessly kept hitting the wall in space, which proved to them there's nowhere to go out there. Which proved to them, you can't touch the stars, you can't touch the moon, you can't touch the sun, because it belongs to the inner eye. It's only there because your presence is here. You are what evokes the sun, the moon, and the stars. There is no place beyond the mind. The universe is not physically suspended in outer space. There is no outer space. There is just the inner eye. And that is where all revolution and awakenings take place, is within yourself. So when you awaken, you don't leave the world behind you. You leave the world behind that you have created. And by leaving the world behind that you have created, you will finally at last see reality shine forth as what it is. Because you are not seeing the depths of the mind, you are seeing reality for the first time. You are seeing everything as an innocent child with no definition, no description. Which means when I look outside, I don't see the world. I see myself, because the self is all there is. And this is what people such as Ramana Maharshi talked about. The self is all there is, and there is only one self. There isn't even two. There is only one self, and it has no name. It's not the world, and it's not the body. It is the presence behind all words and all things. It is what cannot change. It is what does not change. So it's very obvious. The words such as God and gods and demons and angels, all these words will change come, centuries later. Which shows you God doesn't exist in the word God. God is not the word God. Why? Because it will be changed. So highlight to you the presence that is speaking all these words out of your body. This presence. You cannot contain it with your words. You will try, but you can't. You will try to give this presence a description, a definition. Even me in this video, I am defining the presence. Please note, everything I've said in this video is not what the presence is. Why? Because again, the words dissolve. They don't exist. So the only reason I'm communicating what presence is to lead you back to yourself, to point you back to yourself, because nobody can give you what you already have. It is a kind reminder. When people say, look within, it is to remind you, you already have what you seek. You don't become enlightened. You have always been enlightened. It's an unlearning. If you want to become enlightened or be enlightened again, you must unlearn all that you've learned about yourself, which is the hardest part. It is the ego death. It's not easy to tell you or anyone that they've dedicated their whole lives to an illusion. But that's the reality of this surface level dream. The birth name, our bank accounts, everything we own, all of this is a part of the dream. It's superficial. It makes no difference. It means nothing. We are here to understand ourselves to our core and remember who we are. But quite the contrary is happening now, because our inventions have spoiled us with comfort and have spoiled us with luxury. So now we chase the success as luxurious gifts and things and big houses and new cars, new iPhones, all these things. These are what fulfills us on the surface. This is what we spend our time chasing. But for those who are persistent enough, for those who are serious in their awakening, in their journeys of spirituality, for those ready and willing to leave the world behind, this comes at no sacrifice. It comes at no sacrifice to leave the world behind, to leave behind all the news stories and all the new trending items and gadgets. It's no price. It's no sacrifice. Because if you to your true core want to know who you are, then there can be no greater thing in life. And for me, this was the case. My dream, my goal was never to have a big house or any of these things, materials. My dream, my only goal in life from the minute I opened my eyes to the minute I closed them, was to know who I was, to know who I am. Without Tyler needed. Without having to cling to just being Tyler, to just being one person, to just being one thing, one thought. I had to leave behind all thoughts I had of myself. And until I did that, I was still trying to understand infinity through a finite lens. And you cannot be done. This is why I talk about the point of no return. And if you've done psychedelics, you are familiar with the point of no return. But in psychedelics, you are basically presented with an option. And I call this option the point of no return. It's a point of no return that many people who have gone into psychedelics face. And it's very apparent to you when you're in the medicine. It's very apparent to you that this is a make it or break it choice. This choice is very serious, and you're aware of it. But I call it the point of no return because you're aware, basically, if you enter that point of no return, and I don't mean enter it, but you get what I'm saying. If you let yourself go and go into that point of no return, then it's very clear to you that who you will be when you come out of that other point will never be the person who entered. It's very apparent to you. So when you go in, you will never come back out again. This is what a true ego death is. And the reason I say you will never come out again is because your life will be changed forever. Some people may have heard the quotes where, they say, you can't shrink your mind back to the lens, the microscopic lens after you've seen the macrocosm. And that's just it. Once you go into the point of no return, you can't pretend to not know yourself again. You can't pretend with yourself that, well, I'm just Tyler, I'm just this human, I'm just this, you can never fall for the dream again. You will never be able to exist in the dream world again. And that's the price you pay. That's why I call it the point of no return. Because once you've seen reality, you will never be able to dream of reality again. That's probably the best way I can word it. And that's what you come to realize in psychedelics, is everything that you have seen, experienced, and known was nothing but a dream produced by your mind. And the reason I call it a dream is because we have yet to experience the self. What I mean by that is without the mind present. We have never smelled a flower without the mind present. We have never looked at a horizon without the mind present. We have never given a hug to someone without the mind present. We've never experienced the self without the mind present. The mind must always tell you, this is another person, this is another place, this is another thing. Therefore, we are never seeing or experiencing reality for what it is because we're experiencing our own mind. The mind has already labeled the flower a flower before you've experienced it. The mind already has a smell in mind before it smells that flower. You've never smelled it. You've never seen it. Because your mind is the whole flower. Your mind has already made up a description, a name, a title, a smell for this whole flower. And that's just one example. It's the same with life and everything. Your mind has already figured it out before you've actually experienced it. Therefore, you're never experiencing reality. You think you are. But that's what an awakening is. Experiencing just the moment. And the reason it's so hard for us to just be in the moment, because we say, how can I just be in the moment forever? I wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't have any experience. Incorrect, because the moment is the only experience. The only reason you know of experience is the moment. But remember, just like I said, when we get lost in the moment can become pieces. And that's where you start existing in time. Because now there's not just a moment, there's an hour, and then there's 2 hours, and then there's 3 hours, and now you have a day, now you have a month, a year, etc. And you've escaped so far from this moment by getting lost in time. When all this time was just the moment which you avoid. This is why the mind needs to stay busy and needs to define everything and needs to comfortably think or convince itself it knows everything already. So we think if we've described if I can describe the world, or if I, have a name for the world or a story behind the world and why it was created or how it was created, we think we understand the world. We think we have an understanding. And that's it. And so we go on through life through the assumed belief of what we just previously knew. So, as I've said, basically, it's an unlearning. It's an unlearning of all that you've come to know, all that you've come to describe, all that you've come to exist in comfortably. And the best part of this moment is it cannot be changed. We say time, time changes everything. But again, the moment does not change and it cannot be changed. The moment cannot go anywhere. Right? The sun comes and goes, the moon comes and goes, stars come and go, but this moment is unchangeable. It does not go and it does not leave. But again, instead of paying attention to this moment, which is unchangeable, we avoid it. And the reason we avoid it is because deep down we know it's unchangeable. And that's why we're constantly stimulating our eyes and our senses with that which can change. We're falling for the dream, the illusion of that which can change, because we want to see results. We don't want to have the answer say, it's here, it's already here, it's right now, it's right before your eyes. Ego can't handle that. Ego can't handle the fact that it already is. We want to witness and bear witness the change before our very eyes. But we don't realize the change is revealing to you that which does not change. All that is being changed is revealing to you your true face. So your physical face may start developing bumps, may start developing age spots, may start developing wrinkles. This is not your truest face because it's being changed right before your very eyes. This is not your truest being or your truest nature because it's being changed right before your very eyes. Even right now, in this moment when I speak, my body is being changed. My body is in a constant state of decomposition, of dying, of death, right now in this moment. But this moment is not rotting, is not dying, is not changing, is not weakening, is not going anywhere. Because the moment is your truest being, is your presence. And when you realize this, you are home forever. Because there is no place you can go. You've touched every place. The moment you lose your mind, you've touched every place possible. All these places are just your mind. All these people are just your mind, even me. If you believe in me as Tyler Ugaldi, my name, I'm just a projection of your mind. If you look at me and acknowledge I am you and you're only seeing yourself, then there is no Tyler. Now you are aware that you are only seeing yourself, you're only hearing yourself, and that's the reality of all your interactions. So when you lose your mother, when you lose your father, you're not losing them. And that's the greatest trick. Nothing is lost here because nothing has ever been separate. What was separate to you was the title. The title, because the title was your mind the whole time. So when you lose your mother, you're losing a piece of your mind, basically. Because the title, mother, mom, exists in your mind. The image, the projection of your mother exists in your mind. Everything that you see and experience is your own mind. Again, very few people, I'd say Rumi and maybe a few others, have actually spoken of this. But they talk about when you lose the mind, at last, the one true self shines forth. And when the one self shines forth, there is nothing that can die or be lost. Which means even when the form transitions into the next, you will not be fooled with loss. You will not even speak the word loss because you will know yourself to your core and know that this was you the whole time. Nothing has ever been separate. So if you come to love yourself to your core, you will love mother, father, and all these separations a part of it because they're all a part of it. All these words that we come to love as the people and the things that we love exist in you, the presence. And you, the presence, are what you're calling God, this one true moment. So some people may say it's narcissistic to fall in love with the self and to think of, your family as the self, but it's the very same as saying everything is God. Everything is God. The only difference is you are now identifying with God. You are making it personal. And instead of believing in God, you are directly experiencing God for itself. You are directly identifying and saying, this is a part of my nature. I am that I am. Mother, father is not merely a part of me, it is me. And if I love my mother this much, then my truest nature is love. You are love exploding in on itself. If your superficial, surface level love can feel that strong to you, then imagine beyond the surface all the love that is awaiting you. But that's the price of loving yourself to your core, of knowing yourself to your core. It's an explosion of love because love is the answer. You've loved yourself so much, you love yourself so much, that you have gifted yourself this most sacred experience with yourself. But since we fall into the dream, self becomes separate to itself. And now you have, family. And family is very beautiful. It's one of the greatest joys in life. It's what gets so many of us by. However, it becomes a burden at the time of death because it destroys us. We feel as if life is a game, is a trick. Our greatest joy is being taken from us. But when you remain grounded in yourself and your center, when death comes knocking at your door, it is not a burden, it is not a tragedy. You rejoice for this love that you have given to yourself, and you are thankful. and you acknowledge that this one form that is just transitioned will simply become the next form. And that next form will be just as loving and as admirable as this last one. Everything that allowed you to love this form will be in the next one. And the same way you knew this person as family, as love, so will the next. But the next will still be you. And that's the greatest joy. You are always home. This is not some dirty trick or some game that you're playing with yourself. Love is the answer. And if you reach a conclusion through enlightenment where love is not the answer, you are not there yet. But at the end of this tunnel, there is nothing but love waiting for you. And it is your own love. And it is so unspeakable. It's so unspeakable. There is no word for it. We can talk about words of ecstasy and bliss, but it does not do justice. So the last thing I'm going to say in this video that I'm going to end this video with, and I say this every time I make a video on psychedelics, so this may be repetitive for some people, but again, I will stress this. I have never heard somebody who talks about psychedelics say what I'm about to say, and I think this is a huge injustice that people are not talking about this more. So just FYI, this is not a place to sell psychedelics. If you advertise psychedelics in the comments, I'm going to block you from this page. So just a fair warning ahead of time. For the person who just commented they're advertising psychedelics, you will be blocked as soon as I'm finished with this video. So that's not the place for this. But I'm sorry, back to my point. I think everyone who teaches about psychedelics, especially psychedelic integration, should be mentioning this key point, because this is huge. But psychedelics are not taking you to a place. So if you are new to psychedelics, if you are researching psychedelics, if you're looking or thinking about going into psychedelics or experiencing this, please understand they are not, and they will not ever take you to some place. Understand that right now. I've watched countless of testimonies on YouTube of psychedelic, testimonies, things like that, good trips, bad trips. And you hear every single person talking as if they've traveled to some place. And this is the greatest error. And hear me out. Please hear me out. But the reason I call it an error of us calling psychedelics a place is the moment you return to this reality that you were trying to escape from by going in, you'll be right back where you started. Because by you making psychedelics a place, it puts that power that it just showed you. Because it's funny, people say, when they went into psychedelics, they had all the knowledge of the universe, all the answers. And the minute they got back into their bodies, it was like they were given amnesia. They forgot all of it. It was gone. And here's why. You cannot make what's being revealed to you in psychedelics a place. Do not reduce this to a place, but understand instead, just like I said, the presence which does not change. It was your presence which was there in that trip, witnessing everything. And likewise, it is your presence that comes back to reality as you know it. So when you're honest with yourself, what was just witnessing that trip and what's witnessing reality now that you've come back, are one and the same witness. What was just witnessing and what had all the answers on psychedelics, but then comes back to the body, forgets. Because you lose touch of the witness. You lose touch of the moment, and that's what medicine is trying to show you. Is there is only the moment, and that moment cannot be escaped because it is your presence. If you make that moment or that experience into a place, then once you go back to work, once life happens to you, you're going to forget all about that place. And or not you're going to forget about it, but you're going to forget all that it was trying to show you. And what you will say, because again, I've been in this business for 4 or 5 years. I'm very, very familiar. I've seen this happen more than hundreds of times. But you give this person a few months, a few weeks, some cases different. Life happens to them, work happens to them, and they will message you back saying, I need to come back. I need to come back to that place. I need to go back to that place, and they'll make up every excuse they can. Because I don't think I got it enough, or I need to go back in for another download. I've heard it worded many ways. I need to go back in for another download, or I think I just need to go in one more time to kind of burn into my brain what I saw, or I think it'll refresh my memory on what was shown to me, things like that. But what you'll find is, okay, so you come back, you do it, and guess what? You are now in a vicious cycle. A vicious cycle. And if you're with somebody who's loving and trusting, they will eventually tell you not to come back. You need to start doing the inner work. If it's just someone who wants your money, they'll keep collecting your money and putting you into the medicine to go back. But a shaman, a respected shaman, will tell you, I will not allow you back into my medicine until you look into yourself, because what that medicine is showing you is you are the medicine. There is nothing to go back to there, because what was there is what was here, and it's trying to show you that, but you're not paying attention because you have certain expectation, and you also have certain idea of yourself. So until you lose these ideas of yourself, or maybe not even so much lose them, but lessen your grip of them. Be willing to shed them. Be willing to lose them until you're willing even to lose them. You will never see into your truest nature of what you can be or what you are, because you're clinging on to for dear life all that you know yourself as. And you're saying you want to taste infinity, but you're holding on with the tightest death grip. You will not let go. Therefore, how can you ever touch infinity? So you must lose all expectation and all thoughts of yourself. This must be shed. But yes, psychedelics is not a place. It is your presence, and it's your presence without mind. So when people talking about experiencing the void, which is the absence of space, that's what you're experiencing, is this presence without mind present. The only reason, again, we experience person, places, and things is all these exist in the mind. So the mind is telling us this is a place, this is a place, this is a home, this is a person, this is a thing, this is an object, this is an object. Everything we touch and experience is an object. But again, you have a name and a description for all the things you're experiencing. When you get to the bottom of it, it's just your mind. So all you've experienced throughout reality was just your mind the whole time. You've yet to actually experience the reality of nature, of your truest self, without mind present. And understand this, there is no way to have an experience without mind present as far as speaking. So understand that. Don't think that just because I'm saying without mind present, you have to silence the mind, because how can you silence what isn't there? Right? It cannot be done. So it's not about silencing the mind, but you are no longer identifying as the mind. You are no longer reducing self to mind. Yes, the mind's going to chatter and talk, but no, I will never fool myself with identifying with it again. It's there and it can chatter, but I am not reduced to it. I do not exist in the thought nor the word produced by the mind. And that's what I mean by silencing the mind. The mind will always be there. The mind will always be chattering. But again, you do not exist in it. And that's why Alan Watts talks about, if you want to soothe someone's mind, and he used to have a joke of take out your mind and show it to me and I'll soothe it for you. And the joke was that because it doesn't exist. How you can try and show it to me, but it doesn't exist. How can you cure what isn't there? And that's kind of where psychoanalysis goes in, comes into play. Psychoanalysis, where you can analyze yourself through the mind and fix or heal whatever you need directly with the mind. Yeah, I think I've said everything I've wanted to say on here. Yeah, the greatest thing I can stress on this video, if I had to stress anything on this video, is psychedelics are not a place. They're not taking you to a place. They're showing you what's here and now, right now. So if you've ever had a psychedelic experience, it's trying to remind you of what is here and now. And just because you've experienced deities or other things like that, which I personally never have, it's just a stop along the way. Understand that you are what's behind the deity that's trying to guide you into yourself, into the presence. All forms will be abolished. So do not hold on to these deities that guided you. That guide was yourself. And the power awaiting you at the end of the tunnel is your power. It's not some deity and it's not something foreign to you. It is you. Okay. I hope this video was useful. Hope it was meaningful. Forgive me if I was talking fast. I was in a psychedelic state there for a minute with my with speaking. But yeah, if this video resonates, please feel free to share it out. But yeah, I just wanted to share these few thoughts on psychedelics because, like somebody just said on here, divine insights, psychedelics are a gift and a curse at the same time. And it really is a 50-50 shot. It can change people's lives through greatness and also just ruin people's lives through bad things. I mean, bad trips, what they're shown. But honestly, in my opinion, it's all trying to show us to ourselves. And many people simply cannot handle that. They cannot handle the insanity, the madness of infinity. And I will stress it's not for everyone. So please use discernment, use caution, do your research. Do not trust, what the next person says. But psychedelics is the most sacred thing you can do in this lifetime. So if one of your friends convince you psychedelics is a trippy experience, or hey man, we're gonna trip out and see some cool stuff, don't listen to them. Please stay far away from these people because psychedelics is the most powerful and respected medicine on this earth. And the minute you abuse it, you are subjecting yourself to bad trips and a bad experience. And this will change your life. When you do not respect the journey and the medicine, it can ruin your life 100%. It can ruin your mental mind state and it can ruin reality as you know it. And I mean to a point of no return, of where your brain is fried. You can't even exist in reality anymore. You can't even go to work anymore. So please use discernment. Thankfully for me, through my whole psychedelic journey, I stayed with my job. I've been there 8 years. I went into psychedelics for my first time 5 years ago. So it was during my job and all of this that I was, on my journey. But thankfully for me, I was able to, make sense of it all and find my peace, find what I was looking for. But I do think it should be said, it is a 50-50 shot. Everyone is different and not everyone can handle what's shown, because it is maddening, it is insane. And that's what the founder of Niels Bohr, the father of quantum physics, said. He said, if you reach a point in quantum physics where it doesn't scare the shit out of you, then you're not understanding it properly. And that's just the rawness of it. There are some aspects of oneness, non-duality, and these things that do terrify. They are scary, but you must understand they're frightening from the perceptions we have of ourselves. So the only reason they scare us is because they're mirroring our foundational beliefs we have of ourselves, right? There is nothing to fear but fear itself. So fear is shaping itself in accordance to how we see ourselves. Fear is shaping itself and mirroring itself to our most sacred beliefs, and our most sacred belief is who we are. So the reason psychedelics are so terrifying is because it's threatening your most sacred belief of yourself. And that's all I can say about it. There is nothing more sacred than the belief you hold of yourself. And that's what an ego death is. That's why you will see people cry their eyes out on psychedelics. If you've ever gone to ceremonies and people crying their eyes out, sobbing, I mean, not saying they're all experiencing an ego death, because some people experience healing and trauma healing and things like that from childhood. But for the people going in there on ego death, I've definitely sat in on some ego death experiences, and it is so profound. Just watching them cry, because it's not a cry of misery and it's not a cry of sadness or fear. It is a cry of "I'm home and thank you for everything," because you finally understand existence. But again, I'm gonna end this video. My phone's about to die. I'm surprised it hasn't died yet, but I guess I was supposed to deliver this message. So thank you. If you like this message, please